The air in the barracks of Fort Hammond, heavy with the scent of freshly starched uniforms, gun oil, and the faint, lingering aroma of ambition, hummed with the ceaseless energy of basic training. Rows of identical bunks, stripped and made with military precision, stood sentinel in the stark, secular environment. Here, individuality was systematically stripped away, replaced by uniformity, discipline, and a shared purpose. Yet amidst this crucible of transformation, Elias Thorne, a quiet, principled young soldier, stood out, not for his loudness or his physical prowess, but for the silent presence of a well-worn Bible tucked away in his duffel bag. Elias came from a devout, humble background, a small farming community where faith was the bedrock of daily life. The Bible, its leather cover softened by countless readings, its pages thin and almost translucent, was a cherished gift from his grandmother. It was more than a book. It was a connection to his roots, a source of quiet strength, a moral compass in a world that often felt chaotic and unforgiving. He carried it everywhere, a subtle, almost imperceptible part of his gear, a personal sanctuary in the relentless grind of basic training. He was an earnest, often overlooked recruit. His physical build was lean, not naturally powerful like some of his more boisterous comrades. His quiet demeanor, his tendency to observe rather than interject, often led others to mistake his thoughtfulness for meekness, his spiritual devotion for weakness. His routine was a testament to his unwavering commitment. His bunk was always perfectly made, the corners sharp, the blanket unblemished, a small island of order in the organized chaos of the barracks. During drills, his focus was unwavering, his movements precise, his determination palpable. He listened intently to every instruction, absorbing every detail, his mind constantly analyzing, adapting. Meals were eaten quickly in the crowded mess hall, often alone at a corner table, his gaze thoughtful as he processed the day's training, while others engaged in boisterous chatter, their voices echoing off the metal walls. He wasn't antisocial. He simply found solace in quiet reflection, in the internal world of his own thoughts and prayers. He would sometimes steal a few moments before lights out, reading a passage from his Bible, the words a quiet balm in the harsh, demanding reality of military life. Yet, despite his unassuming presence, Elias possessed an inherent compassion, a quiet leadership that often went unnoticed by his drill sergeants, but was deeply felt by those around him. One sweltering afternoon, the recruits were put through a particularly grueling obstacle course. It was a chaotic, high-pressure environment, ropes to climb, walls to scale, muddy trenches to crawl through. A younger recruit, a slight, visibly struggling boy named David Miller, became disoriented during the traversal of a high, precarious wall. His hands, slick with sweat and mud, slipped, and he almost fell, risking serious injury on the unforgiving ground below. He froze, paralyzed by fear, his face pale, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Other recruits, focused on their own survival, hesitated or shouted unhelpful advice, their voices lost in the din of the drill sergeant's shouts. Elias, who was a few feet behind David, quickly assessed the situation. He saw the genuine terror in David's eyes, the precariousness of his grip. Despite his reserved nature and the fact that intervening offered no direct benefit to him indeed, it could slow him down or draw unwanted attention. Elias felt a familiar, visceral tug of responsibility. This was about a comrade's safety, a life potentially in danger, a fundamental duty that transcended personal gain. This showcased his inherent compassion and quiet leadership, a silent act of guardianship. Without a word, without drawing any attention to himself, Elias calmly and efficiently moved. He didn't yell. His voice, low and clear, carried an unexpected authority that cut through David's panic. David Miller. "Listen to my voice," Elias commanded, his tone firm but devoid of panic. "Breathe. Control your breathing. Good. Now, shift your weight to your left foot. Feel for the next foothold. just below your right hand. That's it. Trust your grip. Move slowly. Good. Now, bring your right foot down. One step at a time. I've got you. David, his mind paralyzed by fear, slowly, almost instinctively, responded to Elias's voice. The calm authority, the precise, concise instructions anchored him in the chaos. He shifted his weight, felt for the foothold, and began his slow, deliberate descent, guided by Elias's steady commands. Elias remained directly behind him, offering a steadying hand on David's back for a crucial second, then withdrawing it as David regained his footing. David stumbled onto the ground, coughing, his face pale but intact. He looked at Elias, his eyes wide with a mixture of shame and overwhelming gratitude. Thorn. Thank you. I froze. Elias merely nodded, his expression unreadable. He offered a small, almost imperceptible smile of encouragement, and then quietly continued on the obstacle course, blending back into the line of recruits, seeking no credit, no recognition. He had simply done what needed to be done, an instinct that had defined his character. As he later sat in his bunk, meticulously cleaning his rifle, a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor ran through Elias's dominant hand. It was most noticeable when he mentally sketched a complex tactical diagram from a drill, or when he reviewed military history books that detailed seemingly impossible acts of survival or unexpected turns of fate in battle. He would sometimes pause, his gaze distant, as he studied the intricate movements of armies across ancient battlefields, particularly maps of seemingly impossible flanking maneuvers or strategic retreats. This wasn't weakness or nerves. Rather, it was a ghost, a fleeting echo of a suppressed childhood fascination. He had spent hours in dusty libraries as a boy, poring over books on strategic thinking, on the unpredictability of conflict, on the intricate dance between fate and action. He had seen the world as a grand, interconnected system of patterns, where a single, overlooked variable could change the course of destiny. That innocent curiosity, that intuitive spark of understanding, had been systematically dismantled and replaced by the rigorous demands of military training and objective analysis. Occasionally, while staring at a particularly complex maneuver in a textbook, or during a drill, he would pause, mid-action, and a fleeting, almost visionary look would cross his eyes, as if he could glimpse the unseen forces at play, the subtle shifts in the battlefield that defied conventional logic. It was quickly masked by his usual diligent expression, the disciplined soldier asserting his dominance once more. This subtle tremor, this fleeting look, suggested a buried, intuitive strategic mind, a dormant capacity for profound, perhaps even prophetic, insight into the chaos of warfare that still resided, however deeply, within him. It was a secret, a quiet strength, waiting for its true battlefield. The rigorous demands of basic training eventually gave way to the stark realities of deployment. Elias Thorne's unit, fresh from the crucible of Fort Hammond, found themselves airlifted into a volatile, active combat zone, a sun-scorched landscape where the air vibrated with an unseen menace. The hum of the barracks was replaced by the distant thud of artillery, the crackle of static on comms, and the pervasive scent of dust, fear, and scorched earth. Here, every decision, every movement, carried the weight of life and death. And in this brutal reality, Elias's quiet faith, embodied by the well-worn Bible he carried, became a direct target. The constant presence of his grandmother's Bible, wrapped in its simple cloth, tucked meticulously into a designated pocket of his combat uniform, quickly caught the eye of Sergeant Mark Sarge Peterson. Peterson was a veteran hardened by multiple tours, his face a roadmap of scars, his eyes holding the cynical, weary gaze of a man who had seen too much. He was a leader forged in the crucible of practicality, obsessed with efficiency and dismissing anything he viewed as soft, superstitious, or a potential liability in a combat zone. For Peterson, the only gods that mattered were discipline, firepower, and unwavering tactical execution. Faith, in his view, was a distraction, a weakness that could compromise a soldier's focus in a firefight. The mockery began subtly, hushed comments in the barracks, sidelong glances during mealtimes. "Look, it's Preacher Thorn," a grunt would whisper, just loud enough for Elias to hear. "Gonna pray the bullets away." Elias would feign ignorance, his gaze fixed on his plate, choosing to endure rather than confront. But Peterson, ever the orchestrator, sought a more public display, a way to dismantle what he perceived as Elias's naive dependence. The public humiliation was orchestrated with Mark's typical blend of casual cruelty and tactical precision. It happened during a mandatory evening briefing, held in a makeshift tent illuminated by a single, flickering generator light. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and anticipation as Peterson reviewed intelligence reports, his voice sharp and commanding. Elias, as always, sat quietly at the back, his small Bible, a comforting weight, subtly tucked into his chest pocket. Peterson paused his briefing, his eyes sweeping over the assembled squad, lingering on Elias. "All right, listen up, gentlemen." Peterson's voice boomed, cutting through the tense silence. "Out here, we rely on our training, our gear, and each other. Anything else is deadweight. Anything else is a liability." He then turned directly to Elias, his lips curling into a sneer. "Isn't that right, Thorn, you and your little book?" He gestured dismissively towards Elias's chest pocket. "You think that's going to stop a bullet? Preacher, you think that's going to tell you which way the enemy's going to come from? This ain't Sunday school. Thorn, this is war. And in war, God helps those who help themselves, with an M4 and a full mag, not a dusty old Bible." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter, then snickers, spread through the tent. Some soldiers averted their gaze, embarrassed for Elias. Others, eager to curry favor with the formidable sergeant, joined in the mockery. Mark Peterson, in the front, smirked openly, his eyes gleaming with malicious triumph. He had successfully orchestrated a public humiliation, ridiculing Elias for his faith and his dependence on the book, framing it as a liability in a combat zone. The public mockery affected Elias deeply, not just personally, but also professionally. His standing within the squad, which had been slowly building through his quiet competence, instantly plummeted. In a combat zone, mutual respect and trust were paramount, literally life-saving. To be seen as soft, as superstitious, as a potential liability, impacted his ability to gain the respect of his comrades, which was crucial for survival. It was a blatant injustice, a cruel irony that his inner strength, his moral compass, was being weaponized against him. Peterson's disdain questioned the very source of Elias's inner strength, challenging his quiet sense of self-worth and his hopes for being a valued part of the team. His initial reaction was profound shame and a strong urge to hide his Bible, to retreat completely into himself, to become even more invisible than he already was. He spent the rest of the briefing with his head bowed, the laughter echoing in his ears, the weight of the Bible in his pocket suddenly feeling like a crushing burden. He wanted to discard it, to shed this perceived weakness, to blend in, to simply survive the tour without drawing any further attention. His first instinct was to avoid drawing attention, to become a ghost. Yet, slowly, insidiously, a different emotion began to stir within him, bubbling up from the depths of his despair, a fierce, burning resolve. It wasn't just shame, it was a profound anger, a quiet fury at the sheer cruelty of the public humiliation, coupled with the profound sense of personal connection to his faith. He remembered his grandmother's calloused hands, placing the Bible in his own, her eyes filled with love and unwavering belief. He remembered her words, "This book, Elias, is more than just paper. It's a shield for your soul. It's a compass for your heart, and it will guide you through the darkest of times. To abandon it now, to hide it, was to betray her memory, to betray himself. He realized that simply enduring was not enough. To accept this, to retreat, was to allow Mark Peterson and his cynicism to win, to validate their cruelty. This awakened a dormant desire for vindication, not personal revenge in the shallow sense, but a broader, deeper desire to prove that faith, even in a brutal world, had its own strength, its own form of resilience. He wanted to show that true strength lay not in mocking others' beliefs, but in unwavering conviction and quiet dignity. The point of no return for Elias arrived that very night. As the barracks slept, illuminated only by the faint glow of emergency lights, Elias sat on his bunk. He pulled out his Bible, its worn leather cover strangely comforting in his hands. He opened it, not to read, but to simply hold it, to feel its weight, its presence. He thought of Peterson's sneering face, his dismissive words. And then, he thought of his grandmother. He carefully wrapped the Bible in a fresh piece of cloth, not to hide it, but to protect it. Then, deliberately, he placed it not in the hidden pocket of his duffel bag, but in the most prominent, most accessible pocket of his combat vest, the one he would wear into battle, the one that lay directly over his heart. He understood that this was not just about a book, but about his identity, his moral compass in a world of chaos. To carry it proudly, to let it be seen, was an act of defiance, a quiet affirmation of his inner strength. This event, this burning desire for self-affirmation and ultimate vindication of his inner strength, marked the point of no return for his quiet, victimized existence. He would not be a victim. He would be a soldier. Yes, but a soldier defined by his own principles. By his quiet conviction, he would not just endure. He would prove that faith, even in the crucible of combat, was a powerful, unseen force. The path to a deeper understanding of courage, though unseen and unimagined at that moment, had begun its arduous, solitary journey directly into the heart of the combat zone. The unforgiving reality of combat descended upon Elias Thorne's unit with a brutal immediacy. The sun-baked earth of the active combat zone, once a distant concept, was now their treacherous reality. The air, thick with dust and the acrid scent of gunpowder, hummed with a constant low-grade tension. Patrols were fraught with unseen dangers. Intelligence reports were always incomplete, and every shadow seemed to hold a potential threat. Sergeant Mark "Sarge" Peterson, their squad leader, was a veteran forged in the crucible of multiple tours. His leadership style focused on brute force, unwavering adherence to protocol, and a cynicism born of bitter experience. He trusted what he could see, what he could hit, what he could control. And that often clashed directly with Elias's quiet, principled approach, his reliance on an inner compass that defied simple explanation. The subtle mockery for Elias's faith persisted, a low-level hum beneath the surface of their daily grind. Peterson, in particular, maintained his disdain. "Thorne, you praying to that book for good weather," he'd scoff during a rain-swept patrol, his voice carrying just enough for others to hear. "Better hope it's got a chapter on Kevlar." Preacher. Other soldiers, keen to align themselves with the formidable sergeant, would offer snickers or dismissive glances. Elias, as always, chose to endure, his gaze thoughtful, his hand occasionally reaching for the well-worn Bible tucked into his combat vest, a silent source of strength in a world determined to break spirits. Their first significant challenge came during a routine patrol through a seemingly quiet, abandoned village. The intelligence reports indicated the area was clear, a mere logistical waypoint, but as the unit moved through the narrow, rubble-strewn alleyways, a prickle of unease ran through Elias. His intuitive understanding of the interconnectedness of fate and action, hinted at by his childhood fascination with strategic thinking, whispered of something wrong. He felt a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in his hand. a ghost of that intuitive flicker that often accompanied moments of profound insight. He looked around, his gaze scanning the environment, searching for something his rational mind couldn't yet grasp. He saw a specific bird, a rare, territorial desert falcon, suddenly taking flight from a high, derelict minaret, its movements erratic, agitated, unlike its usual predatory swoop. The wind, which had been a steady breeze, subtly shifted, carrying a faint, unusual scent. Something metallic, something acrid, barely discernible beneath the pervasive dust. He noticed a peculiar pattern of shadows on the ground, near an old, collapsed wall. Shadows that seemed to shift with a strange, unnatural distortion, as if something was subtly moving beneath the earth. These were minute, overlooked details, completely missed by the patrol's standard visual sweeps and by Peterson's reliance on their digital maps. "Sarge," Elias called out, his voice sharp with urgency. "Hold up, something's not right. The Falcon, its flight pattern is off, and I'm getting a strange scent on the wind, metallic, like a disturbed chemical." He didn't seek glory. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was forced to use his insight to warn the team, a primal instinct overriding his usual quiet demeanor. And look at those shadows by the wall. Too dark. Too still. Peterson, his hand already on his comms, scowled. "Thorne, we're on a tight schedule. What are you seeing? A ghost. Our sensors show nothing. Our intel says this area is clear. We stick to the intel, not your feelings." He was initially furious at Elias's unconventional alert, seeing it as a delay, a challenge to his authority. He dismissed Elias's feeling or luck as unscientific, perhaps with cutting remarks about superstition in combat. "You seeing angels again? Preacher." He sneered, loud enough for the nearby grunts to hear, cementing his role as the misguided antagonist, his pride and unwavering belief in rigid military doctrine blinding him to the value of intuitive wisdom. Yet, as Peterson hesitated for a critical second, a faint, almost inaudible click, a metallic snick that should not have been there, echoed from behind the collapsed wall. It was followed by a subtle pressure wave, too minute to register on their instruments. But Elias's heightened senses, sharpened by that intuitive flicker, picked it up. "IED," Elias roared, his voice raw with sudden absolute certainty. Behind the wall move. He threw himself to the ground, pulling the nearest recruit, Liam Rodriguez, the same young man he had helped on the obstacle course, with him. The explosion, when it came, was deafening. A geyser of dust, shrapnel, and debris erupted from behind the wall, precisely where Elias had pointed. Had the unit proceeded, they would have walked directly into the kill zone. Instead, the force of the blast slammed into the wall, its energy largely contained by the unexpected presence of a large, hidden underground water pipe that Elias, with his intuitive understanding of historical infrastructure, a relic of his childhood fascination with old maps, had vaguely registered moments before. The unit was shaken, disoriented, but miraculously suffered only minor cuts and bruises from falling debris, preventing a major casualty and a strategic setback. Peterson, dusting himself off, stared at the smoking crater behind the wall. Then at Elias, his face a mask of disbelief. He had dismissed Elias's warning, had almost led his team into a catastrophic ambush. He knew, with a sickening certainty, that Elias's feeling had saved them. He wanted to attribute the averted danger to a fluke or his own quick thinking to maintain his authority. But the evidence, the smoking crater, the perfectly timed warning, was undeniable. Their interaction did not go unnoticed. Corporal Anya Sharma, a sharp, empathetic combat medic in Elias's unit, known for her pragmatism but also her keen observation skills, had been a few feet away from Elias when he gave the warning. She had seen the flicker of intensity in his eyes, the absolute certainty in his posture. She respected Peterson's authority and his combat experience, but she was deeply intrigued by Elias's quiet conviction and the undeniable accuracy of his hunch. She had also observed Elias's quiet acts of compassion, his almost invisible mentorship of younger recruits. She noticed the subtle, almost desperate sincerity in Elias's eyes, the way his insights, though hard to grasp in their abstractness, always proved terrifyingly precise. She remembered the precise, complex logic in his abstract explanations of the threat, the way he had articulated the signature of the anomaly. Corporal Sharma, with her practical, life-saving focus, became Elias's helper, her presence a quiet counterpoint to Peterson's dismissive arrogance. Later, as the unit regrouped, the atmosphere was tense. Peterson had acknowledged the averted danger, but he continued to downplay Elias's role, attributing it to sheer luck in his formal report. "Thorne just got lucky," he muttered to his first sergeant, loud enough for Elias to hear. "Even a broken clock is right twice a day." However, Corporal Sharma sought Elias out. She found him meticulously cleaning his rifle, his movements calm and precise. "Elias," she said, her voice low, "that wasn't luck. No one saw that IED. Not our intel. Not our sensors. What did you see? What did you feel?" Elias hesitated. Then, in highly technical but abstract terms, he explained his intuitive process. "It's a pattern. Corporal, the falcon's flight, the scent, the way the light bends against the shifting earth, they're all signals. A disruption in the natural order. The enemy. They're not just using conventional tactics. They're using the environment. They're using the chaos itself. My mind, it just maps it, like a complex puzzle, but not one made of logic alone." He spoke of the memory of the battlefield, of how certain terrains, certain wind patterns, certain behaviors echoed past conflicts, hinting at future ones. He spoke of the interconnectedness of fate and action, of how the smallest anomaly could betray the largest threat. Anya listened intently, her keen mind absorbing his abstract explanations. She didn't fully understand the visionary look in his eyes, or the interconnectedness of fate and action, but she grasped the essence of his profound insight. She recognized the specific, almost prophetic language he used, sensing a tangible link between his unconventional understanding and the undeniable, averted danger. She saw the profound, almost spiritual wisdom beneath his gruff exterior. She realized that Elias Thorne possessed a unique form of intelligence, one that complemented their rigorous military training, but transcended its rigid boundaries. The crucible of doubt, for Elias, had forged not just resilience, but a profound, albeit silent, validation of his unique capabilities. But the battle to truly be heard, to have his wisdom embraced rather than scorned, was far from over. The fragile peace in the combat zone shattered. The strategic objective, a heavily contested urban stronghold known as Sector 7, became a brutal focal point. Elias Thorne's unit, already hardened by skirmishes, was assigned to a high-risk mission securing a vital communications hub deep within Sector 7, a network of labyrinthine streets and derelict buildings. The mission was critical, its stakes immeasurable. Controlling the comms hub meant controlling the flow of intelligence, a crucial advantage in the escalating conflict. Failure meant potentially massive casualties and a severe strategic setback. Sergeant Mark "Sarge" Peterson, his jaw set, pushed his men with a grim determination, relying on conventional tactics and the latest intelligence reports, which painted a picture of predictable enemy movements. Elias, though still an integral part of the unit, found himself increasingly isolated. His quiet warnings and intuitive insights, especially after the IED incident, were acknowledged as lucky hunches, but ultimately dismissed by Peterson and many of the other soldiers. They attributed the averted danger to a fluke, rather than a repeatable, profound understanding. Elias was often relegated to less critical roles, away from the frontline decision-making, His unique understanding of the battlefield deemed irrelevant by those who adhered to rigid, conventional approaches. He continued to meticulously review maps, observing the subtle shifts in the landscape, the almost imperceptible changes in enemy behavior. His mind a silent, internal command center. He relied solely on his own convictions and the unwavering, albeit quiet, support of Corporal Anya Sharma. Anya, after Elias's accurate IED prediction, had become a quiet advocate. Her medical pragmatism strangely aligned with Elias's intuitive foresight. She would discreetly bring him updated intelligence reports, observing his quiet contemplation and trusting his instincts when no one else would. Elias became a lonely visionary, his unique brilliance often misunderstood by those who adhered to conventional military doctrine. The mission into Sector 7 began under a deceptively clear dawn. The unit moved with precision, adhering to Peterson's meticulously planned routes. However, as they penetrated deeper into the urban environment, a profound sense of foreboding settled over Elias. The silence was too deep, the air too still. His intuitive understanding of the enemy's unconventional tactics, honed by years of studying irregular warfare, whispered of a meticulously planned ambush. He felt the familiar tremor in his hand, now a persistent thrum, a physical manifestation of his internal alarm. Then, the impending disaster struck with brutal, shocking force. Their communications, state-of-the-art and encrypted, were instantly compromised, jammed by a sophisticated electronic countermeasure. Their intelligence proved fatally faulty. The enemy, far from being in predictable positions, had meticulously planned a multi-layered ambush, utilizing hidden tunnels and civilian disguises. The unit walked directly into a death trap. The air erupted in a symphony of chaos. The crackle of automatic rifle fire, the concussive blasts of grenades, the terrified screams of civilians caught in the crossfire. It was a maelstrom of sound and fury. The unit was trapped, pinned down in a brutal firefight, their casualties mounting with terrifying speed. Bullets ripped through concrete, shrapnel tore through the air, and the once orderly streets became a chaotic killing field. The arena was the smoke-filled urban battlefield, a living, breathing monster where modern tactics were failing against an enemy that defied conventional understanding. Peterson, his face grim and streaked with sweat, barked orders into a dead comms device, his conventional tactics proving woefully inadequate against the enemy's unexpected fluidity and overwhelming numbers. Fall back to cover," Peterson roared. But the retreat was impossible. Their escape routes were cut off by strategically placed enemy snipers and unexpected structural collapses, debris raining down from buildings consumed by secondary fires. The heat became unbearable, shimmering waves of distortion rising from the burning wreckage. They were lost in a labyrinth of smoke and fire, unable to find an exit, their world shrinking to the brutal immediacy of survival. Time pressure. The situation spiraled rapidly towards utter annihilation. The unit was running out of ammunition, the rhythmic click of empty magazines a chilling counterpoint to the relentless enemy fire. Their medical supplies were dwindling, the wounded groaning in agony, their cries echoing in the brutal symphony of chaos. Reinforcements, contacted through a desperate, fragmented satellite burst, were hours away, possibly too late. The enemy was closing in, their relentless advance threatening to overrun their position, to slaughter the pinned-down soldiers. The blare of gunfire, the shouts of wounded comrades, the distant wail of their own alarms, all underscored the terrifying ticking clock. Elias, pinned down behind a crumbling concrete barrier, his rifle still in his hands, felt a surge of cold, analytical clarity even amidst the chaos. He was the only one who truly understood the enemy's unconventional tactics, their use of psychological warfare, their exploitation of hidden urban pathways, their reliance on the element of surprise over brute force. He saw the battlefield not just as a firefight, but as a complex, dynamic puzzle, constantly shifting, constantly evolving. His unique intuitive foresight, honed by years of studying the unpredictable nature of conflict, offered a glimpse of a precise, counterintuitive maneuver needed to break the ambush, a hidden escape route, a vulnerable flanking position, a way to turn their disadvantage into a strategic advantage. His mind flashed back to the mercantile fire of '98, the way the burning building had behaved, its hidden voids and unexpected collapses. He saw parallels in the urban chaos around him, the hidden pathways, the way the fire consumed and shaped the environment. He remembered the tremor, that subtle connection to unseen patterns, now a persistent thrum in his hand. His knowledge was the only hope, the fragile thread that could pull his team back from the maw of the inferno. But he was benched, dismissed, seemingly irrelevant in the brutal heat of battle. His attempts to provide quiet, precise tactical advice to the desperate grunts around him were drowned out by the thunder of gunfire and the screams of the dying. He was a silent prophet watching his comrades fall, his wisdom unheeded, a bitter, agonizing torment in the heart of the chaos. The weight of inaction, of being sidelined, was almost unbearable. He had to reach Peterson, had to make him listen, before the symphony of chaos became a requiem for his entire unit. The urban battlefield of Sector 7 was a cacophony of hellish sounds and suffocating smoke. Elias Thorne's unit, trapped and bleeding, was pinned down in a brutal asymmetric firefight. The crackle of automatic rifle fire was relentless, the concussive blasts of grenades deafening, and the screams of wounded comrades, intermingled with the terrified cries of civilians caught in the crossfire, were a constant, agonizing symphony of chaos. Sergeant Mark "Sarge" Peterson, his face grim and streaked with sweat and grime, barked orders into a dead comms device, his voice raw with desperation. His conventional tactics, so meticulously planned, were failing catastrophically against an enemy that moved like phantoms through the labyrinthine streets, exploiting every hidden alleyway and derelict structure. Casualties mounted with terrifying speed. Corporal Anya Sharma, the combat medic, worked frantically, her hands slick with blood and sweat, trying to staunch wounds, her face a mask of grim determination. "Sarge, we're almost out of medical supplies," she shouted over the din, her voice strained, "and half the team's hit. Ammunition's low." Another grunt yelled, the metallic click of an empty magazine echoing ominously. Peterson, his eyes wide with a dawning horror, looked around at his exhausted, dwindling squad. Their escape routes were cut off by strategically placed enemy snipers and unexpected structural collapses, debris raining down from buildings consumed by secondary fires. The heat, a physical entity, was becoming unbearable. Shimmering waves of distortion rising from the burning wreckage, distorting vision, suffocating breath. They were lost in a labyrinth of smoke and fire, unable to find an exit, their world shrinking to the brutal immediacy of survival. The enemy was closing in, their relentless advance threatening to overrun their position, to slaughter the pinned-down soldiers. Amidst the chaos, Elias, pinned down behind a crumbling concrete barrier, his rifle still in his hands, was attempting to provide quiet, precise tactical advice to the desperate grunts around him. "Lower ground. Use the sewer access point on your left," he rasped, pointing through the smoke, but his voice, usually so clear and authoritative, was unheard, drowned out by the thunder of gunfire and the screams of the dying. The weight of inaction, of being sidelined, was almost unbearable. He was a silent prophet watching his comrades fall, his wisdom unheeded. A bitter, agonizing torment in the heart of the chaos. The gasp moment. As the firefight reached its brutal climax, a sudden, devastating explosion rocked their position. It was a massive, concussive blast from a direct hit on a nearby building, sending a wave of raw force through the air. Elias, caught in the blast, was thrown backward, slamming against the crumbling concrete. His rifle flew from his grasp, clattering uselessly on the rubble. In the chaos of his fall, his well-worn Bible, which he habitually carried in his chest pocket, a tangible symbol of his quiet faith, was violently dislodged from his gear. It tumbled from his pocket, landing innocuously on the dusty ground just inches from his head. In that impossible, microseconds-long moment, as Elias struggled to regain his bearings. A piece of jagged, high-velocity shrapnel, a lethal fragment from the explosion, flew directly towards his chest, spinning with deadly force. It was moving too fast to see. A whisper of death. But in that exact, unlikeliest of instants, the dropped Bible, lying open and face down on the ground, shifted ever so slightly, its worn leather cover cushioning its fall. And then, with an almost audible thwack, the shrapnel slammed into the book, precisely blocking its deadly trajectory. The impact was visible, a small, yet profound dent appearing on its cover, the thick pages absorbing the kinetic force that would have otherwise pierced Elias's heart. It was the impossible, the unexpected, the ultimate, undeniable proof of divine intervention or cosmic fate. Elias, stunned but miraculously unharmed, felt a cold, alien pressure on his chest where the shrapnel should have struck. He looked down at the Bible, then at the smoking hole in the ground where the fragment had buried itself, then back at the book, his eyes wide with a dawning, profound realization. His mind, razor sharp despite the ringing in his ears, suddenly saw the connection between his faith, his luck, and his intuitive knowledge. The Bible, a physical manifestation of his inner strength, had become a literal shield, and in that same blinding flash of clarity, he saw the battlefield anew. He saw the enemy's true flanking maneuver, a hidden escape route through a long disused sewer pipe, and a counter-ambush strategy that only he, with his profound intuitive foresight, could have perceived. He was no longer just seeing chaos. He was seeing the solution, a complex pattern in the brutal symphony. He scrambled back to the fray, no longer quiet, no longer content to whisper unheeded advice. He saw a comms device, still functioning, near a fallen comrade. He snatched it up, his voice raw with urgency and newfound authority, cutting through the blare of gunfire. "Peterson, Sarge, listen to me." Peterson, pinned behind a vehicle, looked up, his face grim. "Thorne, what the hell?" "They're flanking us from the north alley," Elias roared, his voice carrying an undeniable conviction. "Through the old market building, their fire is a diversion. There's a sewer access point in the south courtyard, beneath the broken fountain. It leads to the main street. Behind their lines, it's our only way out. We can counter-ambush from there." He detailed the enemy's true position, a hidden escape route, and a counter-ambush strategy that only he, with his profound intuitive foresight, could have perceived. Peterson, initially furious at the interruption, and still clinging to his conventional maps and protocols, stared at Elias, then at the smoking Bible on the ground, then back at Elias, his face a mask of disbelief. He tried to dismiss Elias, to attribute his sudden, precise knowledge to a concussion, to find a logical flaw, but the immediate, undeniable effectiveness of the tactical advice, the impossible accuracy of Elias's insight, was irrefutable. Every second counted. The turnaround and rescue Sergeant Peterson, profoundly moved by Elias's miraculous survival and the undeniable, impossible accuracy of his tactical knowledge, made the decision. His arrogance shattered, replaced by stunned awe and profound shame. He screamed into his own comms, miraculously functioning again. "Team, listen up, forget the plan, follow Thorne South Courtyard, broken fountain sewer access. Liam, Anya, you heard him. Get the wounded to that access point. Go." He was trusting the divine intervention, the unscientific hunch, over his faulty logical analysis. Elias, guided by his unique knowledge, now directed the counterattack, his calm voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon of clarity for the security team. "Third window from the left. Liam, that's their sniper nest. 2 bursts suppressive fire. Anya, get David through that access now. Move." The unit, following Elias's new tactics, executed a desperate, counterintuitive maneuver. They broke the ambush, pushed back the enemy with a surge of unexpected, well-aimed fire, and extracted the wounded through the hidden sewer passage, just as reinforcements arrived, pouring into Sector 7, their arrival turning the tide of battle. Reactions of the unit and observers. The rescued soldiers emerged from the dust and smoke, battered but alive, their faces etched with gratitude and profound awe. Liam Rodriguez, the rookie Elias had mentored, stared at Elias and his damaged Bible, a dawning realization on his face. He walked up to Elias, his voice choked with emotion. You saved us. Elias. You and that book. Sergeant Peterson approached Elias, his usual cynical sneer replaced by a look of profound admiration. He clapped Elias on the shoulder, a gesture of deep respect. Thorn, he said, his voice raw, I was wrong. About everything. Your faith, your foresight. It saved us. All of us. My rigid focus on conventional tactics blinded me to this profound, life-saving wisdom. He nodded towards the Bible, now clutched in Elias's hand. That wasn't luck. Elias. That was something else. The broader military audience, later informed by Peterson's and Jennings's glowing reports, transitioned from despair over the initial setback to amazement, then to joyous cheers for the unit's miraculous escape. The story of the Bible's critical role, initially dismissed as superstition, became a powerful legend, a dawning understanding of the profound strength that lay beyond mere physical prowess. Elias Thorn, the teased soldier, was publicly vindicated, not by his physical prowess, but by his unparalleled spiritual and tactical foresight and his unwavering dedication to his team. The unseen shield had proved unbreakable. The echoes of the Sector 7 firefight, though violent and brutal, had faded, replaced by the hushed reverence that followed a miracle. The unit's miraculous survival and their hard-won success in securing the strategic objective became a widely celebrated story within the military, quickly spreading far beyond the confines of their immediate command. The incident was hailed not just as a testament to courage and unconventional tactics, but as a compelling, almost mythical narrative of divine intervention. The battered, dented Bible, Elias's quiet companion, became a powerful, inspiring symbol of resilience and faith in the face of unimaginable danger. Elias's actions garnered widespread acclaim, his name now whispered with profound respect by soldiers, commanders, and the public alike. Sergeant Mark Sarge Peterson, the seasoned veteran whose cynicism had once cast a long shadow, was a visibly humbled figure. The events of Sector 7, the near annihilation of his squad, and the undeniable role of Elias's foresight and the miraculous intervention of his Bible had shattered Peterson's rigid belief system. The very foundations of his pragmatic materialist worldview had been irrevocably shaken. A few days after the unit returned to base, physically battered but spiritually fortified, Peterson called an emotional, public address. It was held not in the sterile briefing room, but in the unit's common area, a space usually reserved for camaraderie and quiet reflection. His voice, usually gruff and commanding, was now thick with emotion, tinged with a raw vulnerability that few had ever seen. "Soldiers," Peterson began, his gaze sweeping over his weary but alive unit. "You all know what happened in Sector 7. You know what we faced. And you know how close we came to not coming back." He paused, his voice cracking slightly. "I've been a soldier my whole life. I've seen things. I've trusted in my training, in my gear, in my own instincts. And I've dismissed anything that didn't fit into that neat little box. Especially faith." He turned, his gaze fixing on Elias Thorn, who stood quietly at the back, his posture as unassuming as ever. In his hand, Elias clutched his Bible, its dented cover a visible scar, a testament to its improbable role. "I mocked Private Thorn for carrying this book," Peterson confessed, his voice raw with shame. "I called it a liability. I said it was superstition in combat. I dismissed his warnings, his insights, as lucky hunches. I stood by my rigid doctrine, my conventional tactics, even when they were failing us, even when they were leading us into a meat grinder. A profound silence descended upon the room. This was an unprecedented public acknowledgement from a man of Peterson's authority, a searingly honest confession of his intellectual arrogance and profound misjudgment. He laid bare his flawed reasoning, his blind faith in conventional methods alone, and the dangerous consequences of his closed-mindedness. This was a profound public penance. Sergeant Mark Peterson, the archetypal Type B misguided adversary, had genuinely repented. But when we were trapped, Peterson continued, his voice gaining strength, now filled with a dawning awe. When every comm was dead, every escape route cut, when we were facing total annihilation, it was Private Thorne who saw what no one else did. It was his voice that cut through the chaos. It was his impossible tactical insight that showed us the way out. And it was this book. He gestured towards Elias's Bible, his voice thick with emotion, that absorbed a piece of shrapnel that would have killed him, a piece of shrapnel that would have silenced the very voice that saved us all. He looked directly at Elias, his eyes shining with tears. Elias Thorne, I was wrong. About you. About your faith. About the true meaning of strength. My rigid reliance on conventional doctrine blinded me to the invaluable nature of spiritual strength and unconventional wisdom. You and your Bible. You saved my team. You saved me. And for that, I will be forever grateful. He then stepped forward, extending a hand to Elias, a gesture of profound respect and genuine contrition. He publicly offered to assist in any way with Elias's future endeavors, a clear sign of his genuine repentance. Elias, no longer a teased soldier, received long overdue recognition. His quiet dignity, his unwavering conviction, and the undeniable miracle of his survival resonated deeply with the unit. Peterson, with Corporal Anya Sharma's strong advocacy, moved swiftly to ensure Elias's unique talents were formally recognized. Anya, who had witnessed the entire ordeal and had been a crucial bridge between Elias's insight and Peterson's pragmatism, spoke passionately of Elias's intuitive understanding of the battlefield. Peterson then offered Elias an unprecedented opportunity to serve as a specialized combat strategist and morale officer. His mandate would be to develop unconventional tactical plans, understand psychological warfare, and, crucially, to foster spiritual resilience within units. Integrating his unique perspective into military training and welfare. Elias listened, his gaze fixed on Peterson's earnest face. This was more than a job. It was a purpose, a chance to truly integrate his lifetime of unique foresight and faith into the very fabric of military service. Later, in a quieter conversation in the barracks, Elias and Sergeant Peterson, joined by Corporal Sharma, reflected on the lessons learned. The air, once heavy with cynicism, now felt lighter, imbued with a newfound understanding. I always thought the toughest soldier was the one who could ignore everything but the mission. Peterson mused, his voice low. Now I see it's the one who carries something more than just a rifle, something to fight for, something to believe in. The dangers of intellectual arrogance in combat are real. Sarge, Elias said, his voice calm. The battlefield is rarely what the doctrine predicts, and the limits of purely conventional tactics are brutally exposed when the enemy fights outside the box. He emphasized that true strength came from a blend of mind, body, and spirit, from leveraging every tool available, seen and unseen. My faith, Elias added, clutching his Bible. It didn't just give me comfort. It gave me clarity. It gave me a different way to see. Corporal Sharma nodded, her eyes thoughtful. Your insights, Elias, they were like a different kind of map. One that saw the hidden pathways, and the courage to trust that map. Sarge. That's what made the difference. The quiet calm that settled over the unit was not just the absence of conflict. It was the profound peace of a purpose realigned, a legacy rekindled, and a future built on the solid foundation of both innovation and timeless wisdom. The unbreakable spirit of Elias Thorne, fueled by quiet faith and profound insight, had forged a new path for his comrades, a testament to the strength found in unexpected places. 5 years had woven their intricate tapestry over the sprawling landscapes of the military, and Elias Thorne, once a quiet, unassuming soldier, was now a respected, influential figure within its highest echelons. His journey, marked by the crucible of combat and the unwavering strength of his faith, had forged him into a visionary leader in strategic development and soldier welfare. The unconventional tactical plans he had pioneered in Sector 7, once dismissed as radical, had been meticulously analyzed, refined, and adopted across various branches of the armed forces, saving countless lives and fundamentally altering modern military doctrine. His holistic approach, seamlessly combining rigorous strategic analysis with a profound understanding of human psychology and spiritual resilience, had become a celebrated model for modern military leadership. He had found true fulfillment, balancing his brilliant strategic mind with a deep, unwavering commitment to the holistic well-being of every soldier under his command. Elias's days were no longer confined to the dusty barracks or the tense atmosphere of combat zones. He held a prestigious position at the Pentagon, his office a serene space filled with natural light, overlooking the quiet expanse of Arlington Cemetery. He advised on global strategy, his insights shaping international peacekeeping missions and humanitarian efforts. He was a sought-after speaker at war colleges and leadership seminars, not for his combat heroics, but for his profound understanding of the human element in conflict. Beyond his official duties, Elias dedicated a significant portion of his time to paying it forward. He had established a specialized training program at the military academy, a unique curriculum designed to cultivate a new generation of officers. He taught them to develop their intuitive strategic thinking, to understand the complex psychological landscape of conflict, and to cultivate inner strength that transcended mere physical prowess. He often spoke about the unseen shield of faith and purpose, using his own story as a powerful, living testament. A soldier isn't just a weapon, Elias would tell his eager students, his voice raspy but resonant, as he stood before a large, interactive map of a historical battlefield. They are mind, body, and spirit. Neglect one, and the whole collapses. True strategy isn't just about troop movements. It's about understanding the human heart of the enemy and the unbreakable spirit of your own men. The battle isn't always fought on the visible front lines. Sometimes, it's fought in the unseen battlements of the soul. He often brought his well-worn Bible, its dented cover a visible scar, a tangible reminder of its improbable role in his survival, using it as a prop to illustrate his points about inner strength and purpose. Sergeant Mark Peterson, now a respected first sergeant known for his newfound wisdom and humility, frequently supported these initiatives. His transformation from a cynical pragmatist to a fervent advocate for holistic soldier welfare was complete. He often joined Elias for these lectures, offering his own raw, emotional testimony of how his pride had almost cost him his life, and how Elias's unscientific insights had saved him. Captain Anya Sharma, now a major and a leading figure in combat medicine, also participated, speaking eloquently about the interplay of physical and psychological resilience in the field. Their combined narratives created a powerful, undeniable message that resonated deeply with the young recruits. The military, transformed by Elias's influence, was now more open to diverse forms of strength and unconventional leadership. His philosophy, initially met with skepticism, had become a cornerstone of their training. The initial villain, perhaps a cynical superior who had influenced Peterson's earlier views, had either faced quiet repercussions or simply faded into obscurity, overshadowed by the triumph of integrity and genuine leadership. The department now fostered a culture that valued intuition, empathy, and spiritual resilience alongside traditional military prowess, becoming a model for other forces worldwide. The story culminates with Elias, now a truly revered mentor, sitting in a quiet, serene space overlooking a peaceful military training ground. The sun, A warm benediction cast long shadows across the neatly manicured fields where young recruits performed their drills. He held his well-worn Bible, its dented cover a visible scar, a testament to its improbable role in his journey. He looked towards the horizon, a faint, contented smile on his face, the quiet power of his faith and wisdom radiating outward. The unseen battlements of the human spirit, strengthened by resilience and purpose, endured, not just within him, but within the countless lives he had touched and inspired. The soldier who dared to carry a Bible had found not just an unbreakable shield, but a profound legacy, guiding a new generation towards a future where courage was found in every facet of being. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.